For a lot of us, fantasy football has always looked like this, but it actually began way back in 1962. How it evolved is really fun, but it also shows that compared to what we have now, playing fantasy football used to be kind of a pain. We're in a golden age of fantasy football. With NFL Fantasy Football, you can watch instant video highlights, access free live scoring, and create custom leagues. The game is so popular that if all North American fantasy players founded a country, it'd be the 24th largest in the world. Which makes it weird to think. It wasn't always like this. Fantasy football was created before the personal computer, even before the modern NFL itself, by a group of people in need of an outlet. They were fans of the 1962 Oakland Raiders. That year, Oakland went 1-13 and set an AFL record for lowest winning percentage, and it was during a dismal 3-game East Coast swing that fantasy became reality. Bill Wink Winkenbach, a part owner who had previously created fantasy golf, huddled with 2 other long-suffering Raiders fans in a Manhattan hotel room and sketched out a system of rules. It was the nucleus of the, say it with me, Greater Oakland Professional Pigskin Prognosticators League, or GOPPPL, the first fantasy league in history. It met in Wink's rumpus room. The GOPPPL charter has survived, and a lot of it actually looks pretty familiar. There are weekly head-to-head games, a snake draft, and even institutionalized trash talk involving a Dunce Trophy. And already there were fantasy busts. Quarterback George Blanda, usually a solid pick, went first in the first draft over Jim Brown. But you can also see how the GOPPPL differs from the modern game. Passing didn't count as much, the AFL was pass-happy, and only touchdowns really mattered, not yardage. You can also see just how much work fantasy was, especially compared to today when you can optimize your team in a click. Players then had to submit rosters by Friday at noon to a league secretary. Yeah, there was a secretary who had to keep track of rosters and scores. And because the GOPPPL only took players who had some stake in the Raiders franchise, the game didn't spread until Andy Musolimas took over. He was the guy that picked George Blanda in the first round. In the late 1960s, Andy bought King's X Pub, where he formed the first public fantasy league. The stories are pretty wild. People would pack the bar every Friday night to post their lineups before the 9 p.m. deadline. Andy's 2 big innovations. Yardage finally counted towards scores, and he invited women to play in 1974. Again, it was hard. Local outlets didn't carry scores from across the league, so Andy would call papers in other cities and beg them for results. They thought he was a bookie. And there was so little info out there that at least once a player that had unexpectedly passed away ended up being drafted. From then on, the game slowly drifted across the country. In 1984, a pair of friends self-published a book that explained how to run a league. In 1988, you could buy computer programs that kept track of your league.
For only $69.95.
But it wasn't until free fantasy leagues popped up online that the game broke through, although there was at least a little assist from The Greatest Show on Turf. From then on, fantasy's popularity has grown exponentially and even been embraced by the official game. So the next time you look up player stats in seconds, substitute your running back a minute before kickoff because you have a hunch, or even just join a league from your couch, remember the pioneers that came before you, the pioneers of Oakland, and be thankful for this, the golden age of fantasy football.
We are sure that you're aware of famous cities everywhere, the ones that